Next day, we'll go to the stock market. Well, from retaining the profit, we go to the Ghana Stock Exchange to see how companies there are faring and even give a dividend. And to do that is Esther Edu. Esther,
thank you, Edward. Well, it's midweek trading, and for the composite index, we seem to be on some swing or pendulum. Today it went up by 18.37 points, which is positive because yesterday it went down by over 29 points, and the financial stocks also went down by 9.17 points. With the financial stocks, the equity that drove the indices down was Access Bank. Access Bank lost over 30 pesos. Although Cal Bank gained a peso, it couldn't offset the losses of Access Bank, and the year-to-date change is 52.31%. Yesterday, it was around 51% due to the losses made by MTN, which drove the whole market down. And the financial stocks yesterday change is 16.31%. In terms of volume and value, today is the least during the week, and in terms of volume is over 670,000, and we're valued close to 700,000 Ghana cedis. The market capitalization has also gone up compared to what we had yesterday. On Monday it was around 65.3, it went down to 65.051 and is around 65.2 billion cedis. And the equities that registered price changes today were in the financial sector, the telecommunications sector, and the manufacturing sector. In terms of gains, we have Cal Bank, which gained a peso
with a volume of 370,000.
Over 370,000 shares. Access Bank, let's go up a little. Access Bank lost over 34 pesos, the biggest loser for today. And Cal Bank, also in the financial sector, Cal Bank gained a peso. MTN Ghana also gained 2 pesos, and that drove the indices up, which made us gain a positive trend today. Unilever in the manufacturing sector, the only equity in the manufacturing sector that registered a change lost a peso. So that's about it for trading today. And in terms of the volume, MTN Ghana sold over 233,000 shares, and also
valued at 300,000.
Yes, and also Cal Bank 370,000, 130, but just gained a peso. And Access Bank also traded around 8,880 shares.
All right. Thank you very much, Esther Edu, for that analysis from the stock market. We're going for a short break. When we come back, we're going to look at do a review of the 2021 budget with Habib Adam, an economist. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Market Avenue. Let's pick a soundbite from the government statistician. Today he announced the CPI for the month of October. from a food and non-food perspective, this is the first time since we're recording a convergence between food and non-food inflation, with both sources of inflation standing at 11.0%, leading to the overall national average of 11.0%. So since we rebased our consumer price index and rate of inflation, this is the first time that we've seen convergence from a food and non-food perspective, with both of them standing at 11.0%. The process of arriving at this 11% for both food and non-food was as a result of a sharp drop of food inflation between September 2021 on a year-on-year basis and October 2021 on a year-on-year basis, which dropped by 0.5 percentage points. So while we saw a drop in food inflation on a year-on-year basis between September and October, we see an increase for non-food inflation by 1.1% on a year-on-year basis between September 2021 and October 2021. On a month-on-month basis, we do record a deflation for food inflation, and this is largely driven by vegetables. And on a month-on-month basis, we see an inflation figure for non-food inflation standing at 1.3%. From the perspective of the 13 divisions disaggregating year-on-year inflation, we identified two divisions specifically: housing, water, electricity and gas, and transport divisions that recorded inflation rates higher than the overall average of 11.0%. Specifically, the rate of inflation for housing, water, electricity and gas stood at 20.6%, whereas transport stood at 14.9%. So these two divisions indeed recorded higher inflation rates than the overall average of 11.0%. So that was a government statistician, and he's talking about the inflation for the month of October, which we now at 11%. The Bank of Ghana, I'm coming to you. Habibi, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you in the studio.
Yes.
Now, the Bank of Ghana projected that we're going to do 8 minus plus 2, that is about 10.
Yeah.
Now we're doing 11%. Are we likely to be within that band, or because of look at Christmas just around the corner, are we likely to go beyond the 10 minus 2 plus?
Yes, for now it is possible. It is possible that we could still be within the band of the plus or minus 2. That's, the target was 8% plus or minus 2. But the problem is that, because of Christmas coming, so people had to go out. There was a pressure on the CD because of the dollar. People needed dollars to go out and import for the Christmas and all. So all those things put a lot of pressure. And once your CD depreciated, also affect the inflation. And also, one of the things we didn't do much for the year was that we allow a lot of our food crops, our food produce, to be exported outside. At the beginning of the year, we had a bumper harvest from last year, but what we didn't know, or what government or the key player didn't know, was that a lot of the foreigners had come in to enter into some kind of contract with our local producers, and so they produced and then they came and took them out. So by the time we realized, it was too late, and so that's also what affected us. But I'm sure now that we've realized that problem, things are being put in place, and we will not have so much pressure on the CD again by the close of the year. So I don't foresee it getting higher, except that we're still in a very difficult situation because of the current transport impasse between government and so we want to see how it will play out. If you are lucky for government to be able to negotiate properly with the transport operators, we could still keep it within the band. Otherwise, we may be looking for maintaining it at the 11 or a little bit higher. But I foresee that government would do everything possible to keep it within the band. It shouldn't go beyond the 11% by the close of the year.
But if you look around the world, I think if you look at, US, UK, even China, inflation is really, really surging in those places. Can that affect us here?
Yeah, obviously, that's what, yes. COVID has become a global situation. It is affecting every country. And once that is happening, because our people go out there to buy. So if there's inflation in those countries, obviously they are going to import those inflation to us. Whatever they are going to buy, prices are going to be higher. And therefore, we're going to have that imported inflation coming into the. So these are all factors that has affected it.
Great. Now let's look at the 2021 budget. In your view, We left with about a month to go to close the chapter of 2021 budget. How would you describe the performance so far?
Well, 2021 is been a very difficult year, even though we've seen recoveries from the previous years. If you look at the economic activity, I think there's a jump of almost about 20% from the Bank of Ghana report, that the economic activity has jumped by almost about 20%. But we are still having few issues at the micro level because of the difficulties that we are facing, like we mentioned, inflation, transport sector, a whole lot of issues. But in terms of performance of revenue, we are also doing not bad, though we are not meeting our target. If you look at the Bank of Ghana report from the September report, if you look at the target for revenue, we've done about 34%, against the target of 38. But in terms of expenditure, the target was to do about 68. But probably because of the shortfall in the revenue, we've done about 61 thereabout, which is also mean we're trying to also dampen the expenditure aspect so that we don't go out of gear. I think the deficit situation is almost about 6.1, 5.1 thereabout. So we are working within the target that we set, and I'm hoping that we won't have any major shift in terms of that will force government to also go out of its way to spend beyond what we targeted.
GDP growth rate, we were targeting 4.5% or so. The IMF was saying we're going to do 4.5. Later on it's reviewed and say 4.7.
Yeah.
How do you foresee the growth?
It's still possible. I think we are currently, as of the last quarter, I think the second it was almost about, I think 3.9 thereabout, almost close to 4. So I know sometimes most of the economic activity also happens sometimes getting to the end of the year, because the last quarter of the year people just try to wind up and try to push a lot of things. So at the beginning of the year, sometimes it's always slower to the middle, but from the second quarter onwards, you see a lot of economic activities coming up. So it's still possible that by close of the year, we can hit between 4.5 to 5%.
One major issue that has been on the radar of political analysts, even financial analysts in particular, is the debt stock. As of September, Bank of Ghana said we've done 336 billion, which is about 74.6.
Yeah.
76.4.
Yeah.
Yes. To them is a bit not the best, though. I mean, the threshold is 70% based on the IMF sustainability debt levels. Concerns have been raised there. Are we in a better position now?
It's not something that we should be proud of.
Okay.
But it's a necessity. You see, if you look at how we have managed our debt, sometimes it's the way we communicate. That is why that's sometimes send the wrong signal, and probably sometimes people try to play politics with our debt situation. You understand? But it is not that bad, because I mean, even the big economies. UK, for instance, their debt is almost about 2 trillion, which is almost 100% of their business. America is about 5 trillion. Japan, all of them are, though they are in a better, these are big economies. And so in Africa, we should be very careful, you understand. And so growing, if you have a deficit, it's not that bad, especially when you have to grow your economy out of recession. Because of the COVID, we nearly went into recession, you understand. And so government had to spend its way out of the recession. That's why we didn't get to recession. Most African countries went into recession, and most countries in here. And so if you look at the figures before then, you realize that we were doing very well. I mean, growth was average about 7% before the COVID, you understand. And even with the COVID, we're still among the top growing economies in the world. And so the issue of the debt should not be taken negatively, especially when we are dealing in a situation where government is still trying to provide all the social incentives that decided to provide. The government is still making sure that even under COVID, when people were home, they still got paid. Under COVID, government still recruited. You understand? Even as we speak, government is still recruiting. Because the model that I see the government trying to do is try to make sure that at least everybody gets a bit of the pie. You understand? And that is why government is going to expect. Look, if you look at the trend, I'll just take it from the last 3 governments. When Kufuor left power, or let me say when President Rawlings left power, our budget was about 6.1 billion. That was 2000. And then President Kufuor came in, it moved to 9.5 billion.
That's a desktop.
That's a desktop, the public desktop.
Okay.
It could have been higher, but for the HIPIC initiative, so that was able to absorb close to 4 billion, making it 9.5. So if you look at the growth, that's almost about 55-56%. Now from Atamil's, from the 9.5, from the Atamil's Mahama government, it moved to almost 122 billion. If you look at percentage-wise, that's almost about 1,800 plus percentage growth. You understand?
Now we are now at 336.
We are now at 336. So now, if you look at that, over the last 5 years, that's almost about 176%. You understand? So after the growth of the debt stock, it will always rise until we are able to grow our economy to an extent that we can pay them down. You understand? It will always grow. But what we are always talking about is how to slow it down. You see, how to slow the growth. And that is exactly what the government is trying to do. Making sure that the rate of debt accumulation reduces. Because if it is reducing from over 1,800 plus percentage to almost about, that's in 8 years, to almost about 176, 75, 76% in 5 years, I think we're doing better. You understand? The other aspect that we also have to look at is that sometimes because we play political game with some of these things, we don't really understand. Sometimes you may think that it is the current government that has accumulated that debt, but that is not the issue.
What is the issue?
The issue is that, you see, we know government is in continuity. Okay. It's perpetual. So what happens is that usually if you look at the loans that are passed in parliament, there are usually moratorium of about 2 years, 5 years, all that. And even some of the big ticket projects that we do, some of them you don't get to pay them until they start operation. The contract are said that it's only one. So let's take it, our terminal train at the airport. We open it somewhere, is it 2017 or 20? So yeah, so those that will have been hanging. You understand? But as soon as we get to operate them, then we have to start paying, especially the interest. So these are some of the things that it's an accrual. It's an accrual. And also, if you look at our interest servicing, that also sometimes is very worrying. You understand? Because you realize that each government comes and then the debt servicing that we have to do, especially with the interest, it's not what the current government is borrowing. It is what the previous government did. You understand? That's why we are not servicing, because the problem will have been a moratorium of some years before you start paying. So we need to understand how that works, and therefore, and so that we don't play a political game with some of these things.
Yeah, but the point is that the ordinary man out there, like we normally say, does not understand the dynamics of, I mean, your real economy, the nominal economy, so and so forth. And they again even going to the market to borrow. Now they hear that the talk is that it's not possible for us to be able to even go to Eurobond. So the way to go for Eurobond because our debt situation is worrying.
Yes, it's true. We can still go, but except that it may be expensive. And looking at the current climate, the situation now, even in Europe, you know, we just mentioned that inflation is rising and a whole lot of things. So it's not the best time to go to the market. And also with our debt to GDP ratio of 76.4%, it's not good, because when you go to the market at that level of debt or gearing, it will be very expensive. So what we have to do is to look from within. You understand? To look from within. And one of the options that I think we should look at is to bring back an acceptable form of ajapa. You understand? Because at this current, we can't go out there to borrow again. So we have to leverage on our natural resources, the natural resources that we have, like the minerals and those things that we try to package. You understand? I'm sure the communication wasn't done well, the packaging somehow, but I'm sure it is high time we all supported something like that, so that we don't have to go out and borrow, but we leverage on our minerals to raise money, because that is what our foreign investors come to do. They come to acquire our concessions, and then they go out there and use our concessions to raise funds. And those funds don't even, not all of them even get to come to Ghana. So, but why can't we do that for ourselves? So I think that is what we have to look at, and also look at our domestic revenue. That is where we have been doing very, very bad. And thank God that
but the point is that we've been, like, I'm not cutting you, but you're talking about domestic debt.
Yeah.
Now this has been, we've talked about
I'm talking of domestic revenue.
Revenue, yes, good. Revenue. We've talked about it over and property rates.
Yes.
Every budget we claim we're going to do A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
We seem not to have an answer to this. Looks, for me, it looks like it's like a rocket science that we have finally.
No, we now do have now. Thank God that the current population and housing census came out with the data of structures in Ghana. And most of them were even given this QR codes, so you can locate them. So with that, they mentioned that I think in terms of structures, it was almost about 10.7 million structures, and I mean, we have the kiosks and all that, but we can segregate them to know those.
I think they've said the real property is about 7 point something.
Yes, exactly. So based on that data, and we have the locations. You know, the Vice President has started something like that, and this population has also come to confirm to some of them, because they have attached the QR code to some of those structures. So based on that, we can now identify those structures. We'll go out and find. We can get NAPCO people to go out and verify whether these are residential or domestic.
Commercial properties.
You understand? Thank God we also have the NI card now, which are also linked to our our TIN numbers. You understand? So the GRA will be able to identify people who are not paying taxes. You understand? So what we just need to do is to ensure that we are able to use this data that has been provided us to leverage and go out to take those money. One other thing that I think we should do is a lot of sensitization, education on taxes, the need for us to pay tax, because there are a lot of people out there who don't even understand why they should pay tax. You understand? But you and I, who are in the formal sector, we are always taxed from directly, you understand, from source. But there are people out there who sit under trees, play ludo and other things. Meanwhile, they have properties. They are renting them. People pay rent. People both residential and commercial, but they don't pay anything.
They are artisans. They make a lot of money.
Artisans make a lot of money because we have not formalized those sectors.
Even those in the marketplace,
exactly.
Informal sector.
Yes. So these are some of the things that we should go out to see how we can identify.
The energy sector, it's one of the issues that have been draining and has put so much stress on our debt portfolios. Yeah. What can be done to address some of these challenges there?
Yes, the energy sector, in fact, a lot has been done, but I'll just take you back a bit. What used to happen was that the energy sector was said that there are different levels before you get the power into our homes. We have the fuel suppliers who have to supply fuel to the generators, the IPP, the independent power producers. They will then generate the power, and then Gridco will also take it to ECG for them to distribute to our homes. But in all this value chain, it is only ECG who takes the tariffs. So when ECG takes the tariffs, what they will do is that they will have to pay the Gridco for bringing doing the transmission. They have to pay the generators, the IPP. The IPP also have to pay the fuel suppliers. So what caused the whole mess in the sector was that the KPURC tariff, the approved tariff, doesn't get it beyond 50% of the cost. So what used to happen was that ECG would take the money, and that money is not even enough to meet their own costs. So I'm taking the money, it's not even meant to meet their own costs. How do they pay the rest in the value chain? So it used to happen that ECG would take the money, and then they would decide when to pay this IPP, or when to pay this fuel supplier, when to pay that. That was the situation that happened prior to somewhere 2018. So when this government came, they decided that no, this cannot continue. And that's what used to bring about the liquidity challenges in the system. So we decided to establish this energy sector recovery program. And that was to look at how to solve some of this and bring some kind of financial stability and liquidity into the system. So under the ESRP, the cabinet approved what we call cash waterfall mechanism. The cash waterfall mechanism, there's a committee, and that committee, what it did was to look at the cost of production of all those in the value chain. Okay. And based on that cost, they came out with a formula that based on this, whatever revenue that is received, you are allocated this amount of money. So for generation, they will give them a certain percentage, for fuel supply a certain percentage, for transmission a certain percentage, for distribution is the certain percentage. So when ECG takes the money now,